I never told this story publicly before, mostly because I don't want people to think I have lost it. But it's been eating at me for years now, and I need to get it off my chest. So here it is. Take it however you want. This happened to me in the fall of 2019. I was 27 at the time, living in northern Michigan, working as a surveyor for a land development firm. My job took me out into the woods a lot, deep into areas where there were no trails, no people, no cell service, and I loved it for the most part. Always liked being alone in the woods, even as a kid. That October, my boss sent me to a site near Grayling. It was a large tract of forested land some private company had bought to build a vacation cabins. I was supposed to mark the boundaries and take soil samples. Nothing unusual. I got there mid-morning, parked my truck on a gravel logging road, and started hiking with my gear. I had a GPS unit, a machete, a spray paint, and my pack with food, water, and radio, and my sidearm, a .357 revolver. I always carried in remote areas, mostly for the bears. The forest was quiet. I remember thinking how beautiful it was. Gold and orange leaves, soft moist underfoot, that cold snap in the air that tell you winter is coming. I was maybe 2 miles in when I started getting this weird feeling. Hard to describe, like I was being watched, but more than that, like the woods were holding their breath. I brushed it off as paranoia. Happens sometimes when you are out alone. So I kept working, marked a few points, took some notes. Around noon, I sat on a log to eat lunch. That's when I noticed something odd. The forest had gone dead quiet. No birds, no wind, not even squirrels, just nothing. I was scanning the tree lines. Then I heard a snap. I whipped around. Behind me, maybe 50 yards away, something had stepped on a branch. I scanned the trees again. Nothing. Could have been a deer, maybe a black bear even. I stood up, slowly, hand resting on the grip of my revolver. Hello? I called out. Anyone there? No answer. No movements. Just stillness of the forest. I stood there for a while, heart thudding in my chest, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Eventually, I turned back, packed up, and kept going. But the feeling didn't go away. About 30 minutes later, I came across something strange. A tree, that's a big one, maybe 16 feet tall, was snapped clean in half, like someone had twisted. The break was about 10 feet up. Now I have seen storm damage and rot, but this looked different. It looked deliberate. There were deep claw marks in the bark, 4 of them running down the trunk, each about an inch wide. at least a foot long. I crouched and touched them. They looked fresh. That's when I heard the breathing. A low, raspy, closer to me. I turned around and I swear to God, about 30 feet away, partially hidden behind some pines, was this thing. I thought it was a bear at first, big, with dark fur, hunched over. But then it stood up, not on all fours, on two legs. It was tall, had to be at least 7 feet, maybe even more. Muscular, with broad shoulders and long arms that ended in claws. Its head was wolf-like, long snout, pointed ears, yellow eyes that looked straight through me. And those eyes, they weren't animal eyes. They had awareness in them, intelligence, hate. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was frozen in place. My brain just shut down. The thing tilted its head, sniffed the air, and let out this deep, guttural growl that I felt in my bones. That snapped me out of it. I drew my gun, aimed, and fired few shots. The shots echoed through the woods. That thing didn't even flinch. It just ducked behind those trees and vanished. I stood there, shaking, the gun still raised, waiting for it to come back. It didn't. But I didn't wait around either. I grabbed my gear and ran. I don't even remember half the run back to the truck. I just knew I didn't stop until I locked myself inside and peeled out the tire spinning in the gravel. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment, lights on, gun on the table, jumping at every sound I heard. I kept telling myself I must have hallucinated or something. Maybe the stress, the isolation, or something weird in the air. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't convince myself that it wasn't real. The thing was there, and I saw it, and also it saw me. The next morning, I called in sick. I couldn't go back, not yet. But I knew I had to go eventually. My job depended on it, and my gear was still out there. I told myself I'd go back during the day, just quick enough to grab my stuff. No surveying, no exploring, in and out. I finally forced myself to drive back. I bought a friend. I didn't tell him everything, just that I had a close call with some wildlife, needed help retrieving my equipment. My friend is the kind of guy who doesn't spook easy. He was former military, level-headed, the kind of guy you want watching your back in the woods. We got there around noon. Sun was high, sky was clear, and the birds was chirping. None of that dead silence I had heard before. For a moment, I actually felt stupid. Maybe it was just a beer. Maybe I had overreacted back then. We hiked cautiously, weapons ready, but nothing felt out of place. My gear was still where I left it, scattered around the log where I had eaten lunch. Nothing disturbed, no tracks, no blood, no claw marked trees, nothing. I almost started laughing. Maybe I had imagined the whole damn thing. We were packing up when my friend pointed something out. About 15 feet from my gear, just barely noticeable in the fallen trees, was a print, a footprint, but not a human one. It was long, wide, with 5 toes like marks, but way too big for any person. Maybe 16 inches long and deep. Whatever made it had some weight to it. My friend crouched and inspected it. That ain't a bear, he said, or a wolf. Hell, it almost looked like a person's foot, but something wrong. He looked up to me. This what you saw? I nodded. He didn't laugh. He didn't call me crazy either. He just stood up and said, "Let's get the hell out of here." And we did. We didn't talk much on the way back. Once we reached the truck, my friend lit a cigarette, hand shaking a bit. That told me everything I need to know. If it had rattled him, it wasn't just in my imagination. That night, he called me, said he had done some digging. "You ever heard of the Michigan Dogman?" he asked. "I never heard that before." He explained, said it was a local legend, sightings going back to the 1800s, described as a tall, canine-looking creature that walked on 2 legs, glowing yellow eyes, terrifying horn. Seen mostly in the northern woods, placed like Grayling, exactly where we have been. I didn't sleep much after that call either. In the days that followed, I started hearing more stories once I knew what to look for. Reddit threads, old newspaper articles, local forums, people describing the same thing, a huge upright dog-like creature seen near rural roads or deep in the forest. Most were brushed off as a hoaxes or hallucinations, but some had that ring of the truth. That look in the eye of someone who had seen something they wished they didn't. I started to wonder how many others had seen it, but stay quiet, like me, like my friend. A week later, I quit my job, not because of fear exactly, but because I couldn't keep going out there, not after that. I couldn't look at the woods the same way. They used to feel like home, peaceful, alive. Now they felt haunted. I moved south, closer to the city, took up work that kept me indoors. Concrete, street lights, people around. I miss the woods sometimes, but not enough to go back. Sometimes I still dream about the thing, standing there, watching me, that look in its eyes. Not just an animal instinct, but recognition. Like it knew me, it wanted me to come back. At some nights, when the wind howls, just right I swear I can hear it. Far off, but close enough to know it's still out there, waiting for me. Far off, but close enough to know it's still out there, waiting for me. I never believed in skinwalkers. At least, I didn't before that night. Few months ago, a buddy of mine, Rick invited me to join him for a weekend camping trip in the mountains. It was a small group, just us and two others. The site was far enough out in the wilderness that there was barely any cell signals, the kind of place you go to escape from the world. We set up camp next to a wide, fast moving stream that cut through the forest, and it was beautiful during the day, with the sun filtering through the trees, casting golden light across the leaves. But the atmosphere shifted as the night fell. The sky went dark, and the air grew thick with weight of silence. I have camped plenty of times before, but there was something different about this place. The woods felt wrong. The whole area was isolated. As the night dragged on, the sound of the forest grew louder, more intense, like they were right on the top of us. We built a fire and sat around it, sharing stories, but even Rick, usually the most outgoing of us, seemed distant. It was like he was watching the trees, listening to something that none of us could hear. As the night grew deeper, the forest around us seemed to come alive. At first, it was just the usual noises, crickets chirping, an owl hooting in somewhere far off, and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. But then, something felt off. It wasn't the typical night sound anymore. The woods were too quiet, as if everything was holding its breath for something to happen. I glanced over Rick. He was staring into the shadows at the edge of the clearing, his face pale under the firelight. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was just tired, or the isolation was starting to get to him. But then I noticed how still he was. Not a twitch, not even a blink. Hey Rick, I called out. You alright, man? He didn't respond right away. But when he finally turned his head, his eyes were wide, unblinking. Do you hear that? He asked, his voice low, almost like a whisper. I leaned in. What do you mean? Rick pointed toward the woods, toward the shadow, where the firelight couldn't reach. There's something out there. He said, his voice shaking. Something out there watching us. I laughed it off, trying to be calm. Dude, it's probably just a deer or something. We are in the middle of the forest. Maybe a fox even. You have been out here too long. But the more I tried to ignore it, the worse it got. The fire crackled and popped, but it did little to ease the tension in the air. Every so often, I thought I saw something move just out of the light, at the corner of my eyes. But when I looked, nothing was there. Maybe we should head to bed, I said, standing up and stretching my arms. Get some sleep. We will feel better in the morning. Rick didn't move. He was still staring at the same spot. I'm not going to sleep, he muttered. Not until I know what it was out there. The night dragged on, and no one said much after that. We all huddled close to the fire, our conversations becoming quieter, more focused. I could feel my pulse racing as the darkness crept in. I kept imagining eyes staring at us from beyond the trees. Eyes that weren't human. At some point, I lost track of the time. I was half drifting in and out of sleep when I heard it. A loud snap, like a branch breaking under weight. I jerked away, heart pounding in my chest, my eyes wide. Did you hear that? I whispered, but no one responded. They are still sitting there, but they weren't talking. They were just listening. The sound came again, this time more closer. Rick, I said softly, but when I looked over at him, I froze. Rick wasn't sitting by the fire anymore. He was gone. Rick! I called out again, panic creeping into my voice. The other didn't seem to notice. They were too busy listening to the forest. I stood up and moved toward the edge of the clearing. My feet crunched on the dry leaves and I winced at the sound. But there was no other noise out there. No replies from Ray. No reassurance from anyone. I moved deeper into the trees, trying not to make a sound. The forest seemed to be closing in around me, pressing against my skin, and every step I took made it harder to breathe. The shadows were thick and natural, like they were alive. Then I heard it. A low, menacing growl, something that didn't belong to any animal. I knew it wasn't the usual sound of coyotes or wolves, anything I had ever heard before. This was something deeper, more dangerous. My heart hammered in my chest as I froze in place, straining to hear through the tension that held my body captive. The sound came again, and this time I could hear something else. Something that sounded like a whispering? No, not whispering. It was someone talking. It was in a language I didn't understand. Low, murmuring, like a voice trying to sound human but failing at it. I took a slow step back, but it was late. I could feel it now. Something was watching me. The ground beneath my feet shifted, and in a flash of panic, I spun around, expecting to see Rick standing there, playing some prank on me. But I wasn't alone. A figure stood in the shadows, just barely visible, hunched over in a way that was unnatural. It was tall, far taller than any person should be, and it moved with an odd, jerky gait. Its limbs stretched too far, and the way it bent its back made it look like it was part animal and part human. As it took a step forward, its feet making a wet slapping sound against the forest floor. Then it spoke. Come closer. It said in the same strange, deep voice. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was frozen in place, my heart thundering in my chest. The figure took another step toward me, the dim light from the fire casting strange, twisted shadows across its face. I could see it now, clearer than ever. Its skin was pale, stretched over its bone, like it didn't quite fit. Its eyes were wide, too wide, almost too big for its face. They glowed faintly in the dark, and I could see the reflection of the fire in them, burning like embers. And then it smiled, not a smile of amusement or joy, but something far worse. A sickly grin that stretched too wide, revealing sharp, yellowed teeth that seemed to go on forever. The air turned cold around me. I could feel the ground beneath me tremble. Come closer, it repeated, but this time I heard it in my head, not through my ears, but in my thoughts, twisting and slithering through my mind like a poison. After a few moments, I snapped out of my trance, my instincts screaming at me to run. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just turned and bolted, my heart pounding in my ears, my feet pounding in the ground. I ran fast as I could, not stopping until I reached the camp. The others were still sitting by the fire, looking confused and tired. But Rick was back with them, sitting quietly. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice normal, like nothing ever happened. But I knew what I had seen, and I knew what it was. That thing, whatever it was, wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was something far older, something that had lived in these woods long before we ever set foot in here, and it was still watching us. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. We huddled around the fire, too scared to venture into the dark, too afraid to let the warmth of the flame fade away. Every sound outside the circle of the light made us jump, and every shadow seemed to move, creeping closer to us. By morning, the air was heavy, and the sun did a little to lift the oppressive weight that had settled in the forest. The trees seemed darker somehow, as though the night had left something behind, something that hadn't gone away. We packed our camp in a haste, trying to move as quickly as possible, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, following us. As we made our way back down the trail, Rick stayed close to me. He didn't speak, he didn't look at me, but I could feel his unease. When we reached the parking spot, there was no sign of anyone else out there. We were the last one to leave the site. Rick stopped before getting his car, glancing back at the trees one last time. I heard it again. He muttered, his voice barely audible. "What?" I asked, though I already knew. "Last night, after you left, I heard it, the voice." I looked at him. I looked at him, chills running down my spine. "What did it say?" Rick's face went pale. "It said my name, but it sounded like it was your voice."
Last summer, I embarked on a camping trip with my faithful companion, Emily, in a remote national park few miles from my home. It was meant to be a bonding experience in the nature, but what we encountered on the trail would test our courage and resilience in a way I never imagined. The day began with clear skies and a sense of adventure in the air. I packed our gear carefully, a sturdy tent, sleeping bags, food for both of us, and essential for hiking. Emily, my energetic Labrador, wagged her tail enthusiastically, as if her sensed the upcoming adventure. So we started our journey. The drive was uneventful. Emily and I sat on our seats, listening to music and podcasts. Then we arrived at the trailhead early in the morning. The park was serene and teeming with life. Birds chirped overhead, and the scent of pine filled the crisp mountain air. Emily bounded ahead on her leash, her nose eagerly sniffing every bush and tree along the trail. The path wound through dense forests and rocky outcrops, offering a glimpse of breathtaking visuals and babbling brooks. Emily trotted beside me, occasionally stopping to investigate interesting scents or chase after a small animal that darted across our path. As we hiked deeper into the wilderness, the sound of civilization faded away, replaced by the smoothing symphony of nature, rustling leaves, distant call of wildlife, and the rush of a nearby stream. It was a perfect day for hiking, and I relished every moment spent exploring the untamed beauty around us. By mid afternoon, we had covered several miles and were nearing the destined campsite, where we planned to spend the night. The trail narrowed and climbed steadily uphill, testing our endurance but rewarding with us a panoramic view of surrounding mountains. As we rounded a bend in the trail, I noticed a peculiar sensation, a prickling at the back of my neck, as we were being watched. Emily, usually exuberant and curious, suddenly grew tense and began growling softly, her hackles raised. I scanned the wood around us, half expecting to see another hiker, perhaps a curious deer. But the forest was quiet, almost unnaturally. The hairs on back of my neck stood on end as an unsettling feeling settled over me. Emily pulled on her leash, straining toward a cluster of thick bushes beside the trail. Her growl grew louder, more urgent, as if her sensed something lurking just out of sight. I gripped her leash tightly, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed through the entire tree line. It was unlike any sound I ever heard before, deep, menacing, and filled with primal aggression. Emily barked loudly. Her protective instincts kicked into overdrive. My hand trembled as I reached for the flashlight clipped to my belt. With shaking hands, I flicked it on and aimed the beam toward the source of the growl. What I saw in there made my blood run cold. Emerging from the shadows was a creature unlike anything I had ever encountered before. It stood on its two behind legs like a man, but its body was covered in coarse fur, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural amber light. Its long limbs ended in a sharp claws that dug into the earth with each step. Emily lunged forward, barking ferociously at the creature. It responded with a primal roar that echoed through the entire forest. Shaking me to my core, I stumbled backward, heart pounding, struggling to comprehend the reality of what stood before us. In a split second decision, fueled by adrenaline, I unclipped Emily's leash, shouted for her to run. Her hesitated for a moment, eyes locked on the creature before bolting down the trail towards safety. I turned and ran after her, my mind racing with fear and panic. Behind me, I could hear the creature crashing through the underbrush in the pursuit. Its heavy footsteps echoed through the woods, growing louder with each passing second. I pushed myself to run faster, branches whipping against my arms and legs as I navigated the harsh terrain. Emily's bark echoed ahead of me, guiding my frantic flight toward the safety of the campsite. The adrenaline coursing through my veins fueled my desperate sprint, but the creature's relentless pursuit kept me on the edge, my fear driving me forward with a primal instinct to survive. As I burst into the clearing of the campsite, relief washed over me like a wave. Emily was already there, panting heavily but unharmed. I collapsed beside her, gasping for breath, tears of fear and relief streaming down my cheeks. The campsite offered a small, safety feeling from the terror of the trail. I quickly set up the tent, building a fire, huddled close to Emily for comfort. The sound of the forest were no longer a smoothing symphony. It filled with dread and fear. Every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig sent my heart racing anew. We spent a restless night by the fire, listening for any signs of the creature's return. Emily remained vigilant, her ears perked and her senses on high alert, but thankfully the night passed without further incidents, and the first light of dawn brought a sense of safety. As morning broke over the campsite, I packed up our gear with trembling hands. The memories of our encounter with the unknown creature haunted me, leaving me shaken and weary of the wilderness that had once been source of joy and happiness. As we hiked back toward the trailhead, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled into something beyond our understanding. A creature of legend or myth lurking in the shadows of the national park. The experience had changed me, leaving me with a newfound respect for the untamed wild and lingering fear of the unknown. So, if you ever find yourself hiking or camping in a remote wilderness with your faithful companion or solo, be mindful of the danger that lurk beyond the familiar trail. Nature is beautiful and awe-inspiring, but it can also be unforgiving and harboring secrets that defy explanation. And remember, sometimes it's not just the wildlife you need to watch out for. There are forces in the wilderness that remain unseen, waiting for a unwitting traveler to cross the path. So be careful out there. Hello guys, Malayali Wendigo here. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. If you have, please consider subscribing to the channel, like this video and share them, and also enable the bell icon. And please check out other videos on this channel too. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Until next time, bye. Hope you guys like this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel and enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali Wendigo. Bye.